Hi, good evening, everyone. I hope you can hear me well. In the middle of a power cut, so doing different things to get online. And I hope you can see the screen. Just let me know if you can't, or you can just raise your hands because I think disable talk. Ishar, all okay? Na?
Yes, Antika, all good.
All right, okay. Going ahead with another one of our webinars, which we've been organizing throughout. Uh, we've been focusing a bit on different locations and areas of Sri Lanka. And this time we wanted to move into a bit more of the wilderness and look at very specific areas of wilderness. And some places are a bit, known places. Some places maybe are not too much known to people. So yeah, let's get on with it. We wanted to this time focus on these few areas of mainly Vilpattu in the north west, Kalawava, a little bit closer to Vilpattu, close to Anuradhapura, then Singharaja, rainforest area, Yala National Park, which is of course very famous and a place that everyone knows. I hope the slides are moving for everyone. I hope there's no issues. Just let us know if there is. And of course, Kumana National Park, far towards the south and the east of the southeast of the island. Starting off with Vilpattu National Park, it's a special place. It's a special place for me as well. It's a place that I love to be, place that I love to travel. And if you all might know, might not know, the characteristic of Vilpattu is these water holes that you get dotted throughout. Recent project that we did, I think we did a GPS about 40 of these villus. Some of them might be villus, some of them might not be villus, some of them are very small. But this aerial shot gives you what the characteristic, like the basin shape of a villu, and that is what characterizes Vilpattu National Park from the others. It's the island's largest national park, over 1,300 square kilometers, and as I said, it's characterized by these water holes or these villus. And of course, the park is famous for its megafauna, I would say, in Sri Lanka, with its elephants and sloth bears, and of course, the Sri Lankan leopard. Not only wildlife, but the park is also, it's got these hidden gems of historical sites that a lot of people don't know about, and also a lot of people don't visit. Some of the places, of course, unfortunately, we can't visit within the park because of reasons. I guess it's sorry, reasons because it's people getting down and walking and actually making a mess out of it. So actually, the park authorities have stopped people from going to some of these historic sites. And also, Vilpattu has been declared a Ramsar wetland. Speaking of historic sites, this is one of the places that, to start off with historic sites before we move on to the wildlife, this is one of the locations that you can actually visit. It has been named Queni Palace. Of course, Queni is a queen of Sri Lanka, dating back to the start of the Sinhalese civilizations, when Prince Vijaya, who's said to have arrived from India, landed in Sri Lanka, who came across Queni. So it's named, I mean, by the people as the Palace of Queni, but it hasn't been like archaeologically, or there's no proof to say that it is actually. But it is one of the places inside the park where you can actually see these. I mean, there's no way to get a bearing of the size of these pillars, but these are pretty big pillars. This is one of the locations that you get within the park, which you can actually go and visit and see. Another place, this is historic in the sense, Prince Vijay is supposed to have landed in an area where, and he called it Thambapani because of the copper colorness of the sand on the beach. So this is Kudiramale Point, which is also within the park, and you get to see this copper color sand on the beaches in that area due to this coral formation, which this area was probably undersea, dating back millions of years ago. And with the reduction in sea rise, or the rise in the land, you can see these coral formations, which are probably, and the color of the coral formations, which probably leads rise to this copper coloredness of the sand in the area. There's been a record of over, 1,200 grave sites where there was the civilizations used to bury people in urns, and you can see a picture of one of these urns that they used to bury. And this pottery was it was sophisticated pottery that it predates its era. It's 900 BC, so you get that type of pottery being made much later in history. You get several ruins of old temples. One of them is this which is called Chapukalu temple, which is where this rock inscription is there as well. You can go to actually one point of where there's a small cave, and they've put up a boarding saying this is where your Chapukalu temple is. But unfortunately, you can't get down and walk to these areas anymore. But it is there, and hopefully one day the wildlife department will come up with a way that people can go and experience these as well. And this finally, this rock inscription actually talks about taxation, on how people were taxed those days, so that they could run the temples and then run the government and things like that. There's also these prehistoric sites. This is going back prehistory. This is going back millennia, millions of years back, where all this area was underwater. It was sea. So you can see the red is a part of these coral formations, and then on the left you have this area where you find all these fossils. So these are fossilized sea creatures. Actually, this is an area that you can get down. You can go and walk and have a look at these things, as long as you don't try to take any of them back. So this is very close to the coast, and this is the sites that predate to history, and this type of site you don't find in Sri Lanka and other places. You find similar red rock formations in a corner of Yala, close to the sea, but in other parts of the island, you don't get this type of prehistoric sea creatures and fossils, which you can actually see, and you can even hold some of them. Speaking of willows, there was a question asked as well on what a willow is. So willow is a water body, and willows there's a bit of a debate as to exactly what a willow is. Scientifically speaking, a willow is a depression in the ground, and it holds rainwater. So you get these willows dotted throughout the park. Some people also call other water bodies which don't look like this, but like a big pond, or not as big as a lake, but a big pond or a big body of water. They also use the term willow, but in Vilpattu they're very characteristic. As you can see, they've got this very characteristic shape, and they come in all different shapes and sizes. You get these massive willows as well, and you can see you've got the water body, and then around it you get a grass bank, and then you get the sand banks around it. As I said, Vilpattu on one border is yes, it's close to the sea. So you would think that some of these willows would be brackish or saltwaterish, but what we found out is some of the willows that are very close to the sea, right, literally a kilometer away, or maybe not even a kilometer away, hold fresh water. And then when you go inland, some willows which are way further away inland are actually brackish, or actually saltwaterish, and animals don't, unless they really have to, they don't drink from those. So it's very interesting. There's not much research done on to exactly see what these willows are, where the water comes from. Like, some willows don't dry out at all; they will hold water throughout the year, and some willows are predominantly rain-fed, so they do dry out at some points of the year. But a majority of them don't dry out, so the water is there. And something that we recently discovered, not with all the willows, but with certain willows, if you've heard about the ancient irrigation systems and the ancient tanks in Sri Lanka, there is a system of cascading where one tank feeds the other and the other tank feeds the other. So what we noticed with some of the villus was there is a certain degree of cascade where you get the larger villu, which in turn flows into a smaller villu, and that flows into another villu. So that system was recorded just recently when we actually did a bit of research work on these villus. We found out that there is a bit of a cascading system. So I know this is just my personal opinion. I feel like these could be something that the ancient civilizations actually did dig up to hold water, because you don't find anything like this in other parts of the country naturally occurring. But if they are naturally occurring, then these are the only naturally occurring water bodies that you find in Sri Lanka. We do have plenty of rivers and streams, but all our lakes and all our tanks, everything's been man-made. In Kumana, you get this one area which they call the Kumana Villua. But when you compare it to the Villu in Vilpattu and Kumana, it's more of a wetland habitat than a Villu, but they use the word Villu to describe that as well. Speaking of the wildlife in Vilpattu, I think that's what interests a lot of us who are in the travel industry. I guess number one, everyone speaks of the leopard, then you get the sloth bears. Elephants are not as frequently seen as you would see in certain parks like Udavalave or even maybe Yala. There's a certain area along where the old Manor Road used to go, that is the north western border of the park. In that area, you do get a few elephants during the evenings. They come because the open grasslands are there. But otherwise, elephants are, you see the lone elephant here and there, but not as many much herds as you would in other. The park is excellent for bird life, especially eagles, white-bellied sea eagles, serpent eagles, hawk eagles, even birds like the shikra or the gray-headed fish eagle, even owls like the brown-headed fish owl, forest eagle owls, jungle owlets. So you get quite a variety of bird life as well. Surprisingly, during the migration season, you would expect Vilpattu being so close to Mannar, which is one of the migratory gateways, that it would be, you would find a lot of migratory birds, but not so much. Just the blue-tailed bee-eaters maybe, and a few stragglers of the waders that you do find. It is also a nice place for deer, especially barking deer. Barking deer are not easily seen in other parts of the island. Speaking of, I mean, the leopards are the most charismatic animal, I would say, in our jungles, because they are the top predator. And you've got this amazing opportunity to see leopards. And if you compare it to Yala, as what we in the tourism industry, we go into Yala and we're always used to seeing a lot of jeeps, and sometimes it's not that natural behavior of the animal that you do get to see. So throughout the the webinar, I'd like to explain on that, and how it's much more satisfying that when you get to see animals, that you get to see their natural behavior and not the behavior which is affected by us. So this is quite a a variety of leopards seen in different parts of the park. And as I said, getting pictures like this, getting pictures is one thing. It's nice to get a picture, but you get to see this animal going about its business, and it's not interrupted by us. That's what I think is more satisfying to anyone, not just the hardcore wildlife enthusiast, but to anyone who's coming to Sri Lanka. You want to see a wild animal, you want to see what it's doing, if it's walking, and if it's scent marking, or if they're resting, how they rest, how they sometimes sit with their bellies up, things like that. It's very interesting when you can actually see them. Again, when they're not disturbed, this guy was stalking something, and we were quite in a distance and we were watching. So you get these amazing pictures of an animal that it's in its prime and doing its thing, and not behaving like there's other people there and other people are watching, and you get that feeling when you go to a zoo. So it's amazing. Vilpattu, a place you can go, and as I said, the park is massive, so you've got plenty of areas to roam around by yourselves, and get a sighting like this. It's out of this world. And these are all on the roadways of the park, because you get a lot of dense bushy areas, and leopards, tend to, like the open. They don't want things, hitting them in the face or poking them. So they like to walk out in the open on the roads. And with wheelpaths, you get a lot of shade over the roads and a lot of forest cover over the roads. So that helps as well. So it's not a park where you would say you need to rush in early morning, or you need to rush in, late in the evening. No, sometimes, mid noon. I believe this is around 12 noon ish, around that time. So it's special in that way, where other parks where you get a lot of open areas, and it heats up really quickly. You don't get that with Wilpattu. Just a video of just casually walking and uninterrupted, because there's not many. There's no one there. It was just us two were there, and she's just going about what she wanted to do, and she just came just close to us and just walked past, and then drank water from a puddle right in front of us. I don't think I have that on this video, but yeah, that's what she did. And then moving on, sloth bears, another extremely fascinating animal to see. You do see them in Yala as well, Yala, Kumana. At Wilpattu, you get this certain area of the park where you just enter, and that area is kind of teeming with sloth bears. There's times where every day in the evening or every day in the morning you would see one, and they love the rain. They love the rain because it softens up all the termite mounds, and they can easily go and dig them up. And they're actually very well adapted for this termite eating business. They don't have the front two teeth, and their snouts actually work as a like a vacuum cleaner. You can hear them, you can hear them initially blowing in and then sucking up all the termites like a vacuum cleaner. And also they're very they're adapted to climb trees, because they love this berry that grows on these the ironwood or the palu trees. They love eating that. And they, during the palu season around July, from maybe June, July, and August, during that period, anywhere between that period, you can get the palu season coming in, and they love it and they eat it so much. And that sweet berry actually sometimes gives them a sugar rush as well, so they do crazy things. Actually, bears are a bit, I would say, comical. They do comical things. We've had fellows coming and sniffing the buffers, or sniffing the tires, or chewing on the buffers. Some guys going inside culverts right in front of you, and then you'd think it come out the other way of the culvert. No, but it turns itself inside the culvert and comes out the same way. So they're a bit comical, and it's very hard to track them because their direction, they go one way at one point and then they just turn around and go the other way. But it's good to see these animals in Wilpattu, because you're mostly uninterrupted by a lot of other vehicles. As I said, elephants few and far to come by. This is, of course, as I said, along the Old Manor Road on the northwestern border of the park. A big tusker. We had to keep our distance because this guy is a bit, from what our driver told us, he's a bit aggro towards vehicles, so we kept our distance. Hence the shake on the lens, because it was a bit far away. Jackals, I think, an animal that everyone tends to ignore, and you do get them in a lot of wilds, and they're very fascinating creatures to see. And when you especially see them in pairs and you see their interactions, it's fascinating, because unlike leopards, most of the time you see them by themselves, or you see them with the mother and the cubs, and the interactions are different when you have a mating pair of leopards, or you have a pair of jackals who actually get together and mate for life. So the pair stays together throughout their lives. Still, no one is 100% sure of what happens if one of the partners dies. That is that record. It hasn't been recorded as to exactly what happens in Sri Lanka, at least. But a fascinating creature, and they're the only species of wild canine that we actually have in Sri Lanka. As for the cats, we do have another 3 small cat species, but seeing one of those it's as a tourism company, or a tourism, or in the tourism industry, it's very hard to tell them we can show you small wild cats, because they're very hard to find in the wild, unless you're doing very specific tours that are geared and targeted to seeing small nocturnal animals, because as they are cats, they're mostly nocturnal. So seeing them out in the wild, it might be a bit difficult. So that's why we don't really promote it on a mass scale unless it's a very, very specialized tour for people who are only after that. They're only after the small wildcats or nocturnal animals. As you can see, they spend a lot of time grooming each other. And as I said, raptors are another, people who are fascinated by raptors. It's a great place for raptors. Gray-headed fish eagles, brown fishing owls. During the day, I mean, when you think of owls, you think you see them during the night, but this is actually during the day. It was just doing itself a small sandbar. And of course, the gray-headed fish eagle on the left is having a drink of water from a overflowing puddle that's going along the road. And of course, the serpent eagles are beautiful birds to photograph. And in Vilpat, you can get absolutely close to them. They just stay on the side of the road on branches and sometimes at eye level, which is fabulous. I mean, sometimes you don't even need a camera. You can use a phone and take pictures of these guys. As I said, deer as well. Plenty of species of deer. On the left, the barking deer. It's a very small, maybe the size of a regular dog, small dog species, or the stray dogs that you see in Sri Lanka, probably about that size. And they're usually not in herds. The max you would see was 2 of them, a pair. Otherwise, they're just solitary deer. And Vilpattu is a great place to see them. And of course, the spotted deer, which is quite common throughout the wilds of Sri Lanka, wherever you go, in Yala, Vilpattu, even Minneria, and places like that. Just a bit on Vilpattu, on a tourism aspect. Accommodation wise, you get places like Tamaravilla, Vilpattu Safari Camp, and Leopard Trails, Vilpattu. This I'm talking about one of the entrances, which is on the Anuradhapura, the road, Anuradhapura Putlam Road, which is kind of the main road, or which is kind of the road that we use during normal regular tours and things like that. But there's another entrance on the northwestern side from Eluankulam. Again, from there you can go into the park. There's an entrance. You have to cross a causeway and things like that. But to the normal main entrance, which I'm talking about, it's about a 4-hour drive if you're going from Colombo. Moving on to another national park, well, a recent addition to our list of national parks in Sri Lanka, the Kalaweva National Park, which I think as recently as 2015 it was introduced. So again, it's accessible from Sikiri. It's in Anuradhapura. I've got a location on another slide I'll show you. So if you're going from Vilpattu, you can do it in about 2 hours, or to Dambulla, and then go from there 1 hour 45 minutes directly to the park. So Kalaweva is unique as it's all about elephants. It's there'll be a few birds here and there, maybe a few deer, but it's mainly for elephants. If you're going to Kalaweva, you just need to go in an evening or a morning, and you get to see massive herds of elephants. I think it's a really good alternative to the busy Min areas and the Hurulu Eco Parks and the Kaudullas, where the elephants again are also in between masses of jeeps. As you go to Kalaweva, you'll probably be the only people there. And again, as I said, viewing animals is good to see an animal, but you want to see their natural behavior. You want to see what they're doing, how they're doing, how they break. I mean, with elephants, how they break the grass and kick it with their feet and dust it off. That's what you want to see, and not an elephant running away from a vehicle or just quickly crossing the road and trying to get away as soon as possible. So you want to see that the animals in their element, in their homes, doing what they do. Again, it's, as I said, it's different. The habitat is different from in area, because you get more larger trees and things close to the Kalaweva, the reservoir. I have a voice recording of elephants because at certain times when the Kalaweva is full, you can't access this by jeep, so you have to take a boat. And so far, we've not been able to get a proper operator there for the boats, but that's something that we need to look at. But when you go by boat, the first thing you do is you hear the elephants. I don't know whether you guys can hear this. If you can't, just let me know. There's also me speaking at one point in the voice clip, so just ignore that, and I hopefully you can hear the elephants and their communication. Yashar, can you hear it?
Yes, you can. I can.
All right, thanks.
Chandika, I think now it's just gone. I can't hear it. The elephant sound, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not there.
Can you hear it now?
No.
Sorry, guys. I mean, I honestly, I've tried everything I know. I don't know what to do about it. But anyway, that's fine. If anyone wants, I can always share this voice clip with anyone. You can just let me know. It's amazing because when you go by boat, the first thing you do is hear the elephants. You can hear them communicating. I don't know whether they're saying that we're coming or, but that's what you do here. You initially hear the elephants, and that's it's amazing array of communication, sounds, and all that they have. So what's special about Kalababa is the tuskers. You can visit other parks. You'll have elephants in other parks, but one thing that you won't see is you won't see a lot of tuskers. You might see one or two, but in Kalababa, at certain points, you can see. I mean, we've seen about 10, and all in the same area. You don't have to go searching for them. They're just, in the evenings they just come towards the water to drink, and then while they're coming, they eat and they stop. So you get about 10. Sometimes you can get 3 guys in the same frame. So it's surprising because tuskers in Sri Lanka, it's a very, very small population of elephants that have tusk in Sri Lanka. I think it's less than 5% of male elephants, and unlike African elephants, Asian elephants, only the males grow tusks, and tuskers are a dying breed because we've been trading them for centuries and been taking them out of the wild for centuries. So it's the numbers are not as high as it should be. So they are reducing. But Kalababa has so far escaped from a lot of this, and you do see a lot of tuskers, and it's majestic to see. You get big old guys, properly matured ones like this, and then you get young tuskers like this who are growing up. And I'm pretty sure this guy, when he grows up, his tusks are going to cross. This is another young tusker, and sometimes a light, and then the colors are just amazing. I think I repeated a slide here. Just to get you a location, Kalababa was very close to Anuradhapura, or, where you would say Aukan is the famous Buddha statue. You can access it from Dambulla or Habarana, from Anuradhapura, from Vilpattu. So it's accessible. There's no jeeps per se there. So when you're going, you have to get jeeps from either Habarana or Vilpattu. Those guys, the same suppliers, do the Kalababa run. Do the Kalababa run as well. Moving on from all the dry zone and all that, we're going on to the wet and Sri Lanka's last remaining tract of rainforest reserve, together with the Karnelia rainforest. So it's a historic place. If you go back to all our civilizations, if you see where all the ruins are, ancient ruins, everything is there, you find that all of that is in the dry zone. You would hardly find, except for the Kandyan kingdom, maybe, or, Colombo, the Jayawardhanapura Kotte kingdom, you wouldn't find, ancient ruins in the rainforest areas, or, even in the central highlands. Because people back then understood that the rainforest, the highlands, all these watershed areas are very important for, everything. It's important for everything. Water, dictates a lot of things. So and as Sri Lanka was an agricultural society, agricultural civilization, water was key. So that's why they left all these wet zones alone. So Singaraja has quite a quite a history. And it was first, they had this wastelands ordinance back during the colonial times. And under that wastelands ordinance, it was reserved forest reserve. And then it got its man and biosphere status as a UNESCO heritage site, 1978. And then in Sri Lanka, we have what is known as the National Heritage Wilderness Act, which gives the highest protection to any wilderness area. I think that it's even above the FFP or the Fauna and Flora Protection Ordinance. So Wilpattu has that protection. But saying with all that, at one point, the forest reserve was marked down for logging, and actually it was given to a Canadian company to log it and to make plywood. But there was a massive science-based conservation effort by a lot of people that got together and provided proper scientific evidence of why Singaraja should be protected. And yes, and they won that effort, and as we know now, Singaraja has that highest protection level given to a wilderness area. But sadly, recently, they even tried to get rid of that. So it needs to have that protection because it's such an important area. And the rainforest, I'm going to be less scientific and more, going towards what is important for us as the tourism industry and for us to sell these points, because I think that tourism is greatly important for conservation in any area. Maybe it be the rainforest, maybe it be the Central Highlands, maybe it be Yala, Vilpattu, because that gives a reason, for people. Society now sadly is all driven by numbers and money and revenue and things like that. So if the people in the area are using this as a means of sustainable income, then it gets protected. If you look at some of the parks during the lockdown times, when the parks are not visited, the park bungalows are not occupied, the campsites are not occupied, you get a lot of poaching that happens. There was at a point where the park bungalows were used by poachers during COVID and during lockdown times. So, when there's tourism, when there's people going in, when there's people occupied, even the poachers, there's lots of people who used to poach, but who now drive a jeep or guide in these areas. So that's why it's important that tourism comes in and people come in and visit these places, and so they do stay protected. It gives a reason for the people in the area to protect it, apart from its biological value. So as a tourism aspect, for us, primary and secondary forest is very important. When we have clients who want to go bird watching, if you go to primary forest, it's not going to be the easiest, because primary forest is this forest that has been untouched for millennia. And it's very thick undergrowth, thick overgrowth, middle areas thick. It's very thick. So spotting animals is number one. It's not easy. And if you have photographers taking pictures, it's not easy because it's dark. When you go to secondary forest, it's areas of forest that people have used. There has been some level of plants and trees, things being cut down, but then it has been allowed to regrow. So there's open areas, there's fruiting trees dotted here and there. So it becomes more valuable for bird watching and then going to see birds. Singaraja is also very important on a plant perspective, or someone who's very interested in botany, because you've got a lot of this endemic flora of the island in that area as well, and that includes orchids and trees, creepers, lichens, so much. And if a place has got endemism over like 60%, that says a lot about that area and how important that area is to the country. Just a few pictures of here and there of Singaraja, what the flora would look like, the orchids. And then moving on to the animals. I think the animals are what is the biggest draw to a lot of people, or majority of people. So the rainforest it's known for its birds, but it's got the reptiles, it's got the mammals, it's got the butterflies, it's got the amphibians. So it's a whole host of different animals and species that you get in the forest. So birding, I think, is one of the key aspects of Singaraja, especially the endemic birds. Um, these 6 pictures give you an idea about some of the endemic birds that you get in the Singaraja forest. The yellow-fronted barbet on the far left corner, and of course the blue magpie, which is one of the most iconic birds. And also it has this behavior of the young being looked after by its aunts and uncles, and it has that family unison that a lot of birds don't have. And of course the far bottom down corner, the chicken looking one, which is the Sri Lanka spurfowl, which is probably one of the rarest birds that endemic birds that you get going in Sri Lanka. And in Singaraja, they come to certain people's backyards, and these people are very kind enough to allow you to go and see them. So Singaraja, I think if you don't mention this, it's not complete about Singaraja. So we've got these phenomena called bird waves, or the proper term was mixed species feeding flocks that you get. You get them in the mountain hills as well, in the wet zones, and certain areas like Udavalave, you might notice that a lot of species of birds get together, and they flock together feeding. When you speak about feeding flocks, the greater the crested drongo, or it's an endemic drongo. They're one of the species that kind of starts this flock where they call and make noises and get the other birds. And just recently, I was reading a research paper that said that the orange-billed babbler is actually one of the more key species that starts these flocks. They get together, and they get all these other birds also to come together, where they feed at different levels, from the top of the canopy, then the mid of the canopy, then probably somewhere what you would say eye level, and then on the ground you get different species feeding. So sometimes it's helpful where the species on top, when they're rustling about and moving things, they will drop stuff for the guys at the bottom to eat, or they'll disturb the insects for the insectivores to eat. But it's also got to do with keeping an eye out for predators. When you have a lot of eyes looking out for an eagle, or a cat or something like that, it's very easy to give off an alarm, and let the others know that there's danger close by. Speaking of the endemics, chestnut-back owlet is an endemic owlet. It's a very small owl, which you can see in Singaraja. You can also see them in the Kitulgar areas as well. And of course, our very own grey hornbill, which is also an endemic. You get them in the dry zone as well, but they're very hard to see in the dry zone for a certain reason. I mean, you do see them, but they're always generally flying or moving around very quickly. But some of the rainforest in Singaraja, you get to see them very calm like this, going about business feeding. And of course, this is a very, very lovely little bird. It's a small parakeet. It's called the Sri Lanka hanging parrot, because they do feed sometimes hanging upside down. The best part about these guys is, when they're making their nest, you see birds taking things either in their feet or in their beaks. They're taking the nesting material. These guys actually chop up leaves and they stick them in their feathers before they take them out to take them to build a nest. So it's fascinating behavior scene. Again, blue magpie, which is probably one of the most iconic birds of Singaraja. And I think these two are probably the most sought after by birding clients. The red-faced malkoha. It's like seeing the leopard, I guess, in Yala. The people, you want to see a red-faced malkoha in Singaraja, or Yala or Vilpatto, places like that. You want to see them. So that's a top list bird for a lot of birders around the world. And then the little owl, again, a very recent discovery, as early as the 2000s. In science, it was not known that there was an owl like this. People had heard this strange owl noise, but it hadn't been recorded as coming from what type of bird. But then they did find this very small owlet. It's about the size of the palm of your hand, and you get them in the Singaraja area. They call the Serendip scops owl. It's a very recent discovery for a bird in Sri Lanka, and also an endemic bird and an endemic species of owl. And speaking of other animals, we've got so many, and there's a whole list. I mean, if I go on, I'll be going on the whole day. So sadly, I won't be able to cover every single aspect of Singaraja and the animals. But this is, it looks very similar to what the normal squirrels that we see every day going about our gardens and things. But this is the dusky palm squirrel, which is endemic. As you can see, it's got the dark colors. It's much darker than the normal squirrels that we see. Yeah, speaking a bit towards the tourism aspects, it's very good to identify what type of visitor that you are getting coming into Sri Lanka, for what purpose of let's say natural history viewing. So you've got the hardcore birders, you've got the basic nature lovers, the botany enthusiasts. So when you're sending people to Sri Lanka, it's always very important to identify which type of person it is, so you can send them to the right. There's quite a few. There's about 4 entrances, but the main 2 ones we use are the Vadagala entrance and Deniaya. So the Vadagala entrance, I feel you're going into more secondary forests. You've got the village. You've got the village guides in those areas who can help you as well. That is more for the hardcore birders who are just about seeing all the species of birds that they can, and also for the nature lovers you could. But for the botany enthusiasts, the Deniaya side, that side, the entrance would be, a bit more interesting because of the more primary forest that you get to walk through. And also, if you've got photographers coming in, it's very good to, mention that the equipment that you need to take, because if you need rain covers, you're going into a rainforest, and tripods are like an essential part of taking pictures in Singaraja. And something that I would like to see, the local guides in the Vadagala, that area, are fantastic. You'll be surprised to see that these villages whose normal, job is farming, growing things, they've got such a vast knowledge on the birds and the birds' sounds and the type of habitat the birds live in. Your experience changes vastly going with a local guide to the areas, and they will take you to the village as well, where they know where you've got the nests and you've got birds coming. They say they'll come there at this time, so it changes the whole perspective of your travel to Singaraja. Okay, going back to the dry zone, going back to the wilderness, I think Yala National Park, it's a place I think everyone knows, everyone's probably visited. It's probably the best place, I would say, in Sri Lanka. Yeah, Wilpattu is very, very close. Even density-wise, the highest concentration of leopards in the world is something that can be debated now, with Mumbai saying, we've got the highest density of leopards. But Wilpattu also does have a very high density of leopards. It's just the size is massive in Wilpattu, so you don't get to see a lot of the animals in that area. But Yala is supposedly to have one of the highest densities. It could be. It actually could be, because you do get to see quite a vast number of different individuals in Yala. Just a bit about Yala. When you say Yala has this big complex, right? So on the top right, if you look at Yala East National Park, that is actually Kumana. You get the Kumbukang River going along the border. So Yala's got, if you'd say, it's got 5 blocks plus this strict nature reserve. So block 1 is what we usually go to from the Palatupana entrance, where the side where you get jetwing wild, and then you've got the other side, which is from the Kataragama side, or the Katagamo entrance, are the 2 that we mostly use. And then during the dry season, when the park is closed, we use block 5, which is further towards, maybe you would say, the north of the normal entrance. We use that, and the Galge entrance, that is something that we use when during the dry season, maybe September to October, sometimes when block 1 is closed. But you also get block 3, you get block 4, and block 2. All the blocks are actually open to the public now. Only thing, block 4 and 5 is a bit of a challenge, because the roads are not like you would see in block 1. You've got to have a pretty good 4-wheel drive to access those. And also the animals are not used to so much vehicular traffic yet. So, it's about tracking and finding animals. It's a bit difficult. It's not impossible. It's a bit difficult, but you do get animals. So they're all open. So block 1, you can access from the Katagamu entrance or the Paltupan entrance, the 2 entrances. To block 3, 4, and 5, it's called the Galge entrance. It's one entrance for all those 3 blocks. I have a little bit about block 2 down below in the slide, so I'll speak to you about it then. So as I said, taking pictures of leopards in Yala is fabulous. You get fantastic, sighting opportunities. I think it's always good to go with someone who's experienced in finding leopards, whether it be the jeep driver or whether it be your guide, and going for call. I think a lot of people would know. In Yala you get a call saying leopard is here, come. Going for calls like that doesn't always give you the opportunity like this. So I've got a host of pictures and I think maybe a video or 2 of all, to show that you get to see animals in a different perspective when you're by yourself and there's no one else around. And it's all going not for calls, but finding, looking at footprints, noises, previous sightings, and it's about a bit of actual tracking work being done. So all these pictures, as you can see, it's just natural behavior of the animal, and not disturbed by a lot of vehicles. And that's because, number one, I think the jeep guy who's driving the jeep plays a major role. And this guy is really, the guy we go with was very good. And all this was just pure natural behavior. And as you know, Yala is, characterized by these rocky outcrops all over. And these leopards, they love these rocky outcrops just to, walk around. They get a good vantage point all around. Actually, this rock actually has a pool, like a small water hole on top where these guys drink from. But as you can see, you get these fascinating behavioral pictures. And, you've got the angles and then you see their behavior, which I think guests and clients would love, rather than just seeing a leopard jump across the road or, sitting in a tree, not wanting to get down. And they'll eat out in the open when they're not disturbed. So it's something to keep in mind when visiting Yala. And yeah, this is something you want to avoid, like, just seeing a leopard just run across the road because there's so many vehicles around and people are just trying to get a shot of it. There's other animals as well. I mean, we do talk about, the leopards in Yala. I think that is the main draw, but, bird life is quite abundant in Yala. Peacocks are a fascinating animal. I mean, for us, maybe Sri Lankans, we've seen them so much, not so much, but, someone coming from outside of Sri Lanka don't get to see them so much. A very fascinating animal, and the colors are just wonderful. This is actually a bunch of peahens. And of course, jackals. Sorry for the rude picture, but this jackal pup was just decided to take a poop in the same water that I think his brother and sister was drinking. And as I said, block 5 is another place that we do visit. Again, it's much smaller than block 1. And it's not easy finding animals there. It's again about a bit of tracking skill, but you do get some fascinating sights in block 5 as well. Not only leopards, but jackals as well, and jackals and elephants. Actually, you get to see elephants on the way to the entrance. Sometimes you get to see them on the side of the road, and then earlier, or eagles. Just going on to a bit about block 2. I think block 2 is something that is not talked about too much in the tourism sector. It's block 1 is talked about, block 5 is talked about. Kumana is slowly getting talked about, but block 2 is quite different. Block 2 is a fascinating place to be because the terrain it's more open, vast open areas, shorter trees. You get the same habitats as well as you do get in block 1 of Yala, but then you get the coast. So accessing block 2, you can still go in from the same entrance, not the Katagamu entrance, but the Paltupan entrance. The only catch is you've got to go in 2 vehicles. You're not allowed to go in 1 vehicle. And out of those vehicles, both vehicles need to have a snorkel, and at least one of them has to have a working winch. because the roads are not a bit tough. The roads are really tough, but it's wonderful. You might not see leopards in Block 2, but you will get to see elephants, buffaloes, wild boar, jackals. It's just the leopard and the sloth bear are the ones that are hard to see. But if you are lucky, you do, because I have seen. But most of the time, it's very fleeting, just fleeting sights. And you can there are places to visit that you can't do in Block 2. You can go to the place where the Manic River falls into the sea, and you're allowed to get down there. You can actually get into the water there, which is nice and cool. And then you can drive all the way up to the border of Kumana, where you go to the Kumbukang River again, where you can get down. You can enjoy the river. So going to Block 2 is something that I wouldn't recommend going while you're staying outside. The best way to see Block 2 is to stay inside, and it is to camp. There's so many luxury camping places or glamping places all around outside of Yala, but I think the experience you get staying inside Yala is astonishing, because you won't hear any noises except for the animal noises. You've got there's no electricity or anything. You've got all the lanterns, and you've got all this, the fiery, the light, and then you're out in the open. You're sleeping under the stars, and the night sky on a clear day is just absolutely out of this world. It's so nice. You don't even need you could take pictures of the night sky with a phone. It's that unpolluted. The light pollution is absolutely non-existent. So this is a campsite in Block 2 on the edge of the Manic River. So you've got no swimming pool, but you've got the Manic River. There's no crocodiles here. The water is quite shallow, so you don't have to worry. You can always cool off in there, and it's outstanding. I mean, you can't really properly put out the words to say how much of an experience that is, of actually staying inside Yala than staying outside. And in the nights you've got the campfire going on. In the mornings you wake up to all these bird sounds, and you've also got this added advantage of having that extra half hour where everyone else has to start leaving the park, but you can still roam around for an extra half hour during the evenings, which is an added advantage. Even in the mornings, you get that extra half hour before everyone else comes inside to try and see something on your own. So going to Block 2, of course, this does happen. Generally, this happens to me a lot. So you've got to be ready for a bit of an adventure. Because the roads are like this, but it's fine. As I said, if you have two vehicles and you just got to pull each other out, it happens quite often because this is how the roads are. But it adds to the adventure of being inside the park and then seeing animals, and then in the night listening to animals, and then you can if there's someone to interpret it and tell you the stories of these animals, of what the sounds you hear. It's fantastic, and I think you don't really need air conditioning when you're just by the river in the nights. It gets nice and cool, and you fall asleep to the sound of the river, and the night birds, the night jars, and the owls and the crickets. So it's a lovely experience. Moving on, I hope I haven't taken too much time. Just the last national park, or Yala East National Park, or Kumana National Park, which is known for its lovely bird life. But it's also, you've got leopards, sloth bears, elephants, jackals again. And another advantage of Kumana is it's, you don't get those crowds, you don't get those massive crowds, and you get to see the animals in their own homes doing their own thing, and their natural behavior. And it's accessed by the east. Sadly, they don't let you go in through Yala to Kumana, which you can, but it's not allowed. So you have to go all the way around and to the east through Arugambe, through Pothuil from that side. Again, just like Yala, it's a lovely place to take pictures of leopards. And again, you get to see the natural behavior and And funnily, something I just recently that realized that the leopards in Kumana are more. I think they're a bit bigger and seem to be a bit more bolder. I don't know whether it's because of the Padayatra or where they walk through, during the season where they walk to Kataragama for the festival. They do go through Kumana and certain parts of Block 2, whether they've seen people throughout these, throughout history. Padayatra has been happening for a long time. So I don't know whether it's them seeing that and they've got used to seeing people, or, that's it. But they seem to be a bit more bolder. They're not too much afraid. I don't have pictures of that here, but we had this one leopard just, it actually used our Jeep as cover to try and catch a buffalo calf. It didn't care whether it was a Jeep and there's people inside. It just wanted to use us as cover. And then when he couldn't catch it, she just came back and sat next to the Jeep looking up at us. And it was a bit creepy, but then you wonder, I mean, it doesn't happen in Yala, so you just want to wonder whether, it's something different, or these animals are used to all these people. With the animals, again, jackals and sloth bears are also there. You get to see them. Actually, jackals, you get to see quite a lot, and you get to see some fascinating behavior. Just the recent trip that, we did with, I think, Mr. Correa and Miss Correa, and I think Harin was also there. We saw this jackal pack, actually four of them, actually trying, their luck with buffalo calves. They were going to each buffalo calf, testing one by one to see which one had a weakness. And as soon as the mother looked the other way, they would move closer and see. So, you don't get to see that behavior in a lot of other places because, they're undisturbed. Yeah, again, jackal going at there was a dead buffalo. Not too sure how the buffalo died because we didn't see what happened. But when we saw this, the jackals are trying to get at it. I think the hide was a bit too tough for them to get at. They couldn't. But then a few minutes later, I think a bunch of crocodiles came and tore it open, and I think they got to manage to get their feed. Akuman is also known for its bird life. It's, during the migration season, you get quite a few birds that do come to that side as well, and also the resident. And the Kumana Villu is quite a bit of a hotspot for birds. Quite a bit of birds nest there, the storks and cranes and things. They rest. They nest there at the Kumana Villu. Kumana also has quite a few historic sites. This is the Kurimigala Monastery, which you can visit. It's not a very difficult walk or a difficult hike. You can visit the Kurimigala Monastery. It's the ancient monasterial complex, which is still used, by the way, for priests for meditation. They still use it, so it's important to remember that it's a monastery that is being used. So silence and things like that are essential with Kumana. With the Kurimigala Monastery. There are other few places inside. Kabilitta is a devalaya that is found inside Kumana as well. Yeah, sorry. This 1 hour 50-minute drive is from Chetwing Sir. It's best done in the evenings, what we've realized. And if it's hardcore wildlife clients, Kumana is always good to do. Spend a whole day inside. And it's an excellent alternative to Yala if people want to avoid the crowds and things like that. It's an alternative. All right, guys, I think I've gone on for about an hour or so. I hope it was useful. Yeah, anyone who has questions can either can raise their hands and I can allow them to talk, or if you have anything, you can just type it up and send it. Or you could always contact me via email if you want to ask later. And I just want to thank everyone for joining and listening in. Thank you so much. If anyone has any questions, you can ask. Jacob. Did you get your answer to what a Villu is? Is it clear? I guess. I guess it was clear then. I guess if there is no more questions, then we can wrap. Ishara, can we wrap up then?
Yeah, sure.
All right. Thank you guys once more. Thank you for joining in. Thank you for listening. And hopefully we'll see you again with something different next time in about another 3 weeks, 4 weeks time. Thank you so much, guys. Take care. Good evening.